Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Romania once again and we're going to have a look at another of the Minya beers. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to my good friend Minya. You might have seen that recently he very kindly brought me up a box of Romanian beers when he was visiting Sweden recently, and we've just been working our way through these over the last couple of Romanian videos, and it's really nice, as I always say, to try different beers from different places, and definitely cool to feature a few more Romanian breweries for you here on the channel, in fact. So yeah, massive thank you to Minya once again for making this one and the other recent Romanian reviews possible, and I sincerely hope that you guys watching from all different places in the world are enjoying these reviews as well. But yeah, for this one then, we are going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. I had been under the impression that all of the beers that Minya had given me were actually from the Bucharest area, but this one isn't, so this will be a little bit different. It's a style though that I very much enjoy, and it will be my first example of a Romanian brewed version of this style. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. For this review, we will head to a city called Sibiu, which is in the very centre of Romania. In fact, it is in Transylvania, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Nembeer. So this one is their Bio Dunkel. It comes in at 5.9% ABV, and as the name suggests, this one is a Dunkel lager beer. So yeah, one of my favourite German styles, in fact, so I'm really curious to see how these guys interpret this one. So yeah, let's do as we always do with these beers then. Let's see how we get on. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Nembeer. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I've mentioned to you, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Romanian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because we're working our way through the Minya beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Nembeer then. So Nembeer, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Sibiu in Transylvania, which is almost right in the middle of Romania, in fact, if you look at the map. But the company was founded back in 2018 by Italian Daniele Nembrini and his wife Oana Dan. So apparently Daniel took a trip to Belgium back in around 2011, and it was there that he encountered the Trappist beers and the monks behind him, and he was just kind of taken aback by this kind of brewing culture, if you like, so much so that it inspired him to take up brewing himself and brew his own beers. But once he got back home, he started home brewing, and this came about in sort of late 2011, but he actually comes from a background as an electrical engineer, and he has about 20 years experience within this field, and I think he actually still does some work within that as well. But he spent about 4 years perfecting his different recipes, and after having received positive feedback from his friends, he decided that he was going to go and found his own little microbrewery. But he met Oana through mutual friends during a trip to Sibiu, and she had a lot of experience in kind of procuring investment in small companies and things like this and helping them establish themselves. So she offered to help get them started, and from there their relationship developed, and it's, you know, apparently it's quite an interesting love story, that. But Daniele eventually moved to her in Sibiu, and they established the company there, and it released its first beers in April of 2018. But by 2019, they were producing around 15,000 litres of beer per year, and they've continued to expand their fermentation capacity in more recent times. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 9 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and it seems to be mainly kind of Belgian and German styles that they do. So yeah, that is all the information I could really find on Nembeer, in fact. And there's a very good website actually called Beerologic, which has a lot of details on these Romanian breweries, so that's where I found the details on this brewery mainly. But you can also take the owner's name, of course, and put it into the news section in Google, and usually that'll flag up a few different articles and things. So the information in this little section has come from various different articles that I've found actually, but that is as much as I can really tell you about the story of how Nembeer came about, in fact. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, I think now we can crack on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. From what I understand, this one is a sort of experimental batch that they've done. So not sure how much of this beer was actually brewed, because there are, if you look at it, it does have some handwritten things on the side, and usually when you get that, that means that it is a pretty small kind of pilot batch or something like that. But yeah, seems to be pretty nice. You've also got the Nembeer bottle cap, and this one you can see the brewery symbol here, in fact, Nembeer, and of course it is a monk. I think they do take, it did say in one of the articles that they take inspiration from one of the local kind of churches or old monasteries or something like this, although it didn't, it didn't actually say what the name of it was, and that's why I never included that in the details about the brewery. But yeah, I think, you know, it's obviously the fact that they're using a local monastery is kind of a tribute, I guess, to Daniela's inspiration from the Belgian monks, so makes sense. But yeah, nice bottle cap on this one. This will be joining the collection, the vast collection that we have now of different bottle caps of beers that I've reviewed over the years. But as I said to you, this one is a 5.9% Dunkel lager beer, and it is organic as well. It's got the European Union organic symbol down in the bottom of the label there. But yeah, this is a 330ml bottle. I actually don't know what this one cost, because it was of course given to me as a gift by Minya, so big thank you to him once again. But yeah, I don't know what this beer would actually cost you if you bought it out of the shop in Romania. But yeah, as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of my Dunkel lager beers, and that kind of came about again. I'd always been a fan of them, but I really got back into them more recently, having seen my friend Peter at the Clueless Drinker review the Augustiner Dunkel, and from that, of course, I really started to get back into my my different lager beers actually. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Dunkel beer is essentially like a mahogany lager, kind of brown sugary and kind of brown bready. There is a Czech equivalent of this one, which is known as the Cherny. So the Cherny and the Dunkel are roughly the same. But remember, when it comes to a lager beer, the basic definition of a lager beer is a bottom fermenting yeast, cold temperature fermentation between 8 to 12 degrees. Normally ales, of course, ferment at higher temperatures, and they use top fermenting yeasts about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, in fact. But yeah, there's lots of different types of lager beers. Generally speaking, the German ones tend to be more kind of crisp, I find, and the Czech ones tend to be a little bit more kind of yeasty. It's a little bit more kind of yeasty and smooth, in fact, yeasty and bready, a lot of people describe them as. But yeah, there's usually similar versions of things between the Czech Republic and Germany. So yeah, in Germany this kind of lager is called the Dunkel. In the Czech Republic it is known as the Cherny. So yeah, interesting. And of course, yeah, I've seen other versions of that from other countries as well. It's called the Tume up in Estonia, in fact. But yeah, 5.9% Dunkel. Dunkel Cherny type lager beer, this one. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what this has in store for us. Oh, that looks nice. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. So let's get this guy out and into the glass and we'll see how we go. Yeah, I was actually really happy when I saw that Minya had managed to pick me up a Dunkel lager. I think he just basically went into the shop and asked them to pick out a few things that they would recommend. And of course the Dunkel, you know, you would think that when the beer scene's just kind of getting started up in Romania, it would mainly be like, you know, stouts and IPAs and the odd lager and things like that you were getting, but it's not, you wouldn't really think that you would find a Dunkel among some of these breweries. So this was a really cool member, if you like, of the box that Minya gave me. I was quite happy with this. But yeah, oh, there's a wee bit of yeast sediment kind of gone into this one, but it's all natural, doesn't really matter so much. But yeah, this looks pretty nice actually. It certainly has a nice level of kind of haze to it, which is good. But yeah, before the head disappears on this one then, you can see that the beer is poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head. That has faded away to be a very thin foamy layer, but you still have a nice thick ring around the edge of the glass there. But if we shine the light through this one, you've got a lovely kind of A very rich kind of mahogany colour to this one. So it's a mix of kind of mahogany and chestnut and things like that. You maybe could argue rosewood, but I don't think it's quite dark enough to be a sort of rosewood colour. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer, the EBC rating in other words. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Although again, the magnitude is decided by the type of malts mainly, but then any adjuncts that you put in and any barrel aging that you do will change the colour slightly as well. But usually those 2 factors are reserved for sour beers mainly, I find. But yeah, this one will be all about the different types of malt strains, malt grains I should say, that have been used in this one. So yeah, it certainly looks the part of a Dunkel lager, although I would say if we were comparing it to the different kinds of brown lagers, it looks a little bit more like some of the ones you'd find in the Czech Republic, because they tend to be a little bit more hazy and yeasty and things like that. So it looks a little bit more like a Cherny rather than a German Dunkel, if you like. But yeah, colour-wise and things, nothing overly surprising about it, but you can see it has got a little bit of that natural haze to it. And these beers, of course, are brewed in quite small batches, I think. I'm not sure exactly how big their brew kit and things is, because it didn't really say about that on the website or anything like that. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, let's go for it. Yeah. So, aroma wise, this one is pretty nice actually. I'm going to say straight away, this is a big bready, kind of yeasty leaning Dunkel, like Dunkel lager, this one. So it is a little bit more like a Cherny, I would say. It is a little bit more like a Czech Cherny. But, you know, these, as I say, the difference between these styles isn't that much. It is just a case of one is kind of clean and crisp and the other one is more kind of bready and yeasty. There's not, you know, like huge differences between the 2, in fact. But yeah, the aroma behind this is pretty damn nice. So yeah, it's kind of got what you would expect from that Czech variant of the style. So yeah, this one does come across as pretty damn good actually. So I'm going to give them a thumbs up for the aroma, but let's try and break it down for you and describe it a little bit more kind of succinctly, if you like. So yeah, on the aroma side of things then, I would say that this beer, the backbone of this one is a lovely kind of smooth, wholemealy, rye bready character. You can smell that right across the aroma of this one. Then you certainly get a bit of a kind of stronger, more grainy bread crusty element out of it, and you've got some lovely big kind of brown sugary elements on this one as well. So you can actually smell that there's a big oily sweet caramel note to this one. You certainly get a slightly more toasty brown sugary element out of it too, and also some kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity ones. But I would say this beer has a lovely big smooth, quite thick, brown bready, rye bready, wholemeal bready kind of backbone to it. Some more grainy bread crust as we say, and then that kind of spectrum of brown sugars that we mentioned a minute ago. Of course, you do get some undertones of like woody character out of it. You do get 1 or 2 little nutty elements in there as well. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this is very nice actually. As I say, it does that breadiness that it has really does make me think more of a Czech Cherny rather than a kind of clean and crisp German Dunkel, if you like. But there's nothing wrong with that. Both are lovely styles, as we say. But yeah, I think there's not too much else we can say about the malty side of this one. But I think we've got a chance of getting something quite complex when we actually go to taste the beer. But on the hoppy side of things then, let's kind of focus on this. So on the hoppy side of the beer, it comes across as quite smooth actually. I do wonder, could it be a bit of Slovenian hop that's in this? But, you know, that said, I do wonder if there are actually Romanian hops there, because, you know, they've got a good bit of farmland, of course, but they've also got, you know, the ideal kind of conditions for growing hops, actually. So I'd be very curious to know if there are different Romanian hop varieties out there, and I'd be more surprised if there wasn't, to be quite honest with you. Either that, or it's just, there will be some, but it's just not such a developed industry, I would guess. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer is very nice and very smooth. So you get a little bit of a kind of earthy character out of this one. You do get a little bit of a kind of smooth but slightly brighter floral aromatic note, and again a sort of smooth, leafy, grassy quality. So yeah, I like the way that the aroma goes together in this one. So yeah, the aroma on the green side of things with this beer is very nice. Yeah, I think it works. The whole green component of this beer goes together very, very well, in fact, so it gets a big thumbs up for me on that nose as well. You will notice that the breadiness of this beer and the green component are just very, very smooth, and they just fit together really quite well, in fact. So I think last thing we really need to look at with the aroma will be the fruity side of it. So the fruity side of the beer has a wee touch of sharpness to it. And you know, a popular hop to use in these Dunkels can sometimes be Northern Brewer from Germany. It's very popular in the Doppelbox as well because of its red fruity qualities. And you certainly get a wee bit of that out of this one. So I do wonder, could there be a little bit of Northern Brewer in this one? Because you certainly get a wee bit of a kind of blackcurranty note out of it. There's a wee tiny hint of a slightly sharper raisin in there as well. But yeah, I do get a little bit of raisin, a little bit of fig, and you know, a kind of juicy blackcurranty element to the beer. So I really like how I do really like how all of this goes together in this beer. It just merges together very, very nicely, in fact. So yeah, the kind of fruity side of this beer gives you a wee bit of sharpness and a wee bit of sweetness, but the rest of the beer is very, very smooth, in fact. So yeah, I like the way that the aroma kind of goes about its business in this one, so we can give it a thumbs up for that. But as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think this one is going to be quite nice. Definitely more of a Czech Cherny, as I say, than a German Dunkel, just going by the aroma. But let's have a taste and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Bio Dunkel, coming in at 5.9% ABV, which incidentally is a little bit strong for Dunkels. Normally these are about 5% in my experience, but it comes in at 5.9% ABV, and this one is from Nembeer in Sibiu in Transylvania. In Romania. Let's get stuck in. Slanje, skål, cheers, or if I remember rightly in Romanian, Noroc. Let's go for it. Ooh, that is pretty nice, actually. The thing that I like about this, and I'm going to say the first thing that it strikes me, is it still has that little bit of rawness to it, and this is what I love when you try beers from the really small breweries, is that they still, you know, they're not overly refined, if you like. They still have a little bit of that homebrewed rawness to them, and you certainly get that out of this beer, absolutely. But yeah, it does have, I'm going to say straight away, if we're talking about this beer from a stylistic sense, this is absolutely a Czech, for me it's absolutely a Czech Cherny rather than a German Dunkel. Although I understand why they use the name Dunkel, because you know Dunkel is more well known than the than Cherny, of course. But yeah, this one I think is really nicely done, actually. But definitely, you know, the yeastiness, it's a big sort of yeasty and bready example of the brown lagers, I guess we could say. So that makes it more of a Cherny than a Dunkel, in my opinion. The Dunkels are just a bit more kind of crisp and things like that. But that said, the other impression that I have of this one is it's very, very clean, actually. It has the kind of big smoothness underneath, but you've got that lovely big cleanliness to it as well. And it was saying in one of the articles that I was reading that the water quality in this area around Sibiu is very, very high, so it's ideal for brewing beer. So you certainly get a nice kind of clean mouthfeel to this one at the same time as you get the kind of big smoothness and big yeasty characters. So yeah, I like how this one, yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business, so it gets a big thumbs up from me, I have to say. But let's try and break down the flavour of this one for you and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth. So on the kind of malty yeasty side of things, then we'll focus on the middle third, on the back third of your palate. So you can feel the backbone of this beer. The backbone of this beer is a lovely kind of smooth, it's a lovely big sort of smooth kind of brown bready sort of thing. So the very backbone of the beer, you can feel that slightly more toasty, grainy bread crust there. That's in the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate. Sitting on top of that, you've got a big smooth, kind of wholemealy type thing, a big sort of wholemeal brown bready kind of character in there as well. But I do get a slightly stronger and slightly sweeter rye bready quality to this one. But like I say, the bready notes in this beer are pretty thick. In fact, that they're quite kind of clumped together and quite kind of pungent in a sense. But I think the as we say, I think the kind of yeasty elements that you get out of this one are very, very nice for sure. Yeah, so you can feel like on the back third of your palate particularly you get some of the yeasty notes, but we'll come to that in a minute. Let's focus on that middle third of your palate for just now. So as I said, the backbone of the beer is a toasty, bread crusty note. On top of that you get the more kind of smooth wholemeal bready sort of thing, and then you've got a kind of thicker, as I say, a bit of a thicker and slightly sweeter rye bread note sitting on top of that, and you will feel that the further you go into the aftertaste with that, it kind of dries out a little bit and you get more of that kind of graininess from the bread coming out of it. But then sitting on top of that, it's kind of, you get a wee bit of a sweeter circle, but either end of that middle third of your palate you do get a bit of a slightly more intense bread crust, and we'll come to that in a minute. But sitting in the dead centre of the middle of your palate there, you've got a lovely kind of big sweet caramelly note to this one, and it's interesting because it's quite concentrated in the middle of your palate, and this of course is the boozy side of the beer, but in the very dead centre of your palate you've got a sweet caramel there. As you move further out from that, the brown sugars get gradually more toasty, and as you push out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, it has a few more kind of biscuity elements to it, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. How good a reference that is for Romanians that watch this video, I'm not 100% sure, but it's like a sort of slightly cookie-ish note that you'll get out of this beer towards the kind of edge of that middle third of your palate. So I do like that, but I think that describes the middle third of the palate quite well. The only other thing I think we could say is that underneath the front half of that middle third of your palate you maybe get one or two little woody and slightly nutty undertones, but yeah, those are quite minimal, I guess you could say. But yeah, border region then between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. You can feel that slightly stronger bread crust, but the base of the beer on the back third of your palate is quite similar, so you've got a smooth, you've got a little bit of that toasty bread crust. Again, you get the wholemeal bread and then you get the thicker rye bread, but then on top of that you can feel the big, more airy, yeasty element coming out of the beer. So yeah, I do like how that goes together, absolutely. So, yeah, the big sort of yeasty element that you get out of this one is kind of interesting, because it does have, so you get a bit of sweetness out of it. You can feel like that slightly sweeter brown bready note there in the back third of your palate. So the flavour on the back third of your palate, the flavour is distinctly taller. So you can feel that you've got those slightly sweeter, almost brown sugary rye bready notes in the back third of your palate. So the flavour is kind of like that. When you start at the back of your palate, the flavour is a bit taller, then it just condenses down as you come further forward. Then when you go into the middle third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of squashed together actually. So I can really appreciate how that goes together in this beer, in fact. So yeah, the way that all kind of pieces together, I think, works very, very nicely as well. But yeah, the bready, malty and yeasty side of things in this beer goes together really quite well. And as I say, it's that yeasty character that for me makes it more like a Czech Cherny than a German Dunkel, because it would be a bit more kind of crisp in a sense if it was a Dunkel. But I do like the Czech variants on this style as well. But yeah, let's say then the hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as you push further forward onto the front corners of your palate, it has a nice little bit of floral aromaticity there, and round the front curve of the tongue it's a bit wetter and more kind of green and leafy in a sense. So I do like how I do like how all of that goes together in this one. It's got a nice green component to it for sure. So yeah, the way that goes about its business in this one, I think is very, very nice as well. So thumbs up to Nembeer for the way that this beer goes together, in my opinion. I really do like this one for sure. The green component I think merges quite well with the sort of smoothness of the rest of the beer. And as I say, this one is a big smooth yeasty sort of lager beer for sure. But yeah, let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in this one. There's a wee bit of a more kind of bread crusty note, and the base of that front third of your palate is a smoother kind of brown bready, it's a smoother sort of brown bready and kind of as we say, it's a smoother brown bready kind of just brown wholemeal. I'd say it's a more mix of wholemeal and rye bread. You do get a bit of that there, but that is the backbone of the front third of your palate there. On top of that, you do get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters push their way out of the hops. So if we go to the top of that, you do get a wee bit of there is a very slight raisiny note to this one. Underneath it, you've got more of a kind of figgy element to it. But yeah, a bit of a lighter juicy figgy note there, and as you move further forward onto the front half of that front third of your tongue, you maybe get a bit more of a kind of juicy blackcurrant and maybe just a wee tiny hint of a bit of a blackberry note. This one, a bit of a more oily blackberry as you reach the very front tip of the tongue. So yeah, bit of raisin on top, nice kind of juicy figgy note on the back, and then as you move further forward, a bit more figgy in a sense, a little bit of a blackcurranty note to it, and then a more oily blackberry as you reach the tip of the tongue. I think that sums up the fruity side of the beer quite nicely, and that fruity component that you get out of this is quite common for this style actually. But yeah, I think that sums up the flavour pretty nicely. It's been quite interesting to go through this one because it is quite different to what we've had from other ones before. So yeah, interesting stuff, this beer for sure. But let's round off the review with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. So yeah, as I was saying at the start of the video, at the start of the tasting, the mouthfeel of this beer, it really is quite smooth, but at the same time it's got an element of cleanliness to it because of the quality of the Sibiu water. So that's kind of interesting. You've got this kind of duality, I guess, going on in this beer. So in one sense it's very, very smooth, like a Czech lager beer, but then on top of that it's very, very clean. So you've got this kind of, this kind of two-sidedness to this beer, which is interesting. But overall, I would say it's a really nice, drinkable, just smooth lager beer, this one actually. So yeah, carbonation is quite smooth in this one, as I say, quite clean, but really smooth in that sense. Definitely Czech cherry, as I've repeated a few times. In terms of the bitterness and stuff in this beer, I think this is a fairly standard 20 IBU bitterness. There is a wee touch of bitterness coming from the graininess and toastiness and stuff in the malt base with this one. But yeah, it's got a degree of sweetness and things like that, and a bit of toastiness in that on that side of the things as well. So yeah, lovely smoothness underneath and a bit of a kind of sweetness and toastiness sitting on top of that in the malt base. So the malt base and the yeasty characters, I think, have got again a sort of duality going on with this thing. Smoothness, breadiness, then you've got the sweetness and kind of toastiness mixing in together. Hoppy side of the beer, 20 IBUs, I think, roughly, as we mentioned. Then you've got a little bit of a juicy, fruity character to this one as well. So yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. I think we can leave it at that for the tasting section of this video. But an interesting beer, and definitely cool to review a Romanian brewed Dunkel. It's not often you would have kind of thought that, but we have had a Romanian quadruple in this little mini series as well. I think Mina picked me out a few different styles actually, which was really quite interesting. So yeah, cool stuff. So I think we can leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nembeer as well. Hopefully we can return to these guys at some point in the future. This is a bit more of a kind of unusual beer for them, so maybe we should review something from their core range or whatever. We should take a look at that, something more Belgian, because I think they do brew more Belgian styles of beer rather than anything else. But yeah, this one was the Bio Dunkel, 5.9% ABV, very much like a Czech Cherny in my opinion, and a nice example of it. It's got that lovely, slightly raw, homebrewedy type vibe to it, which is nice, small scale microbrewing. So yeah, I really enjoyed that about this one. So check out this beer if you get the chance. But yeah, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Nembeer's social media, and thank you again to Mina for making this review possible. Slàinte, skål, cheers, Norok, and I'll see you in the next one. Do get your Romanian brewery recommendations in the comment section below. Cheers.